Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. With me, as always, Steve Marik. I'm Zack Carpenter. And today, Steve, we got to talk to Glenn Thomas for the first time, the Huskers' new assistant coach, the co-offensive coordinator, and the quarterbacks coach. Little background, just real rapid fire. Glenn Thomas, he worked at the Division II level. I believe it was Midwestern State. He worked there for 7 seasons as an assistant coach and eventually assistant quarterbacks coach with the Atlanta Falcons. He moved to Temple. He was on the rules staffs at both Temple and Baylor, in 3 different roles: the quarterbacks coach, then co-OC quarterbacks coach, and eventually OC, I believe. And then he went to UNLV and Arizona State, where he was the OC and quarterbacks coach there. And then he returned to the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers last season during 2023 as an offensive assistant. And now he's at Nebraska in a role that's very familiar to him. And as he said today, he's seen it at all levels.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be something that benefits the Nebraska quarterback room as it stands right now. 3 scholarship players, a lot of them young. I know Heinrich Haarberg's entering his 4th year, I think it is, but he's still young in terms of on-field action, how many snaps he's played. He's only played last year. And then also the 2 true freshmen, Dylan Raiola, everybody knows him. Daniel Kaelin, everybody knows him. Those guys have taken 0 snaps in college ball, so we don't really know what we're getting with those guys yet. But what I liked about Glenn Thomas, what he talked about is building quarterback play, starting from where they are at, meeting them where they're at, and then just building them up. Sometimes you don't want a quarterback coach to come in and start saying, you need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that. That's not what Glenn Thomas is trying to do. He wants to create as much or as fewest gray areas as there can be. And he talked about a gray area being something that's a bit more complex that maybe you see more at the NFL level with Matt Ryan. Using Matt Ryan as an example, Glenn Thomas said there was a lot of gray area with Matt Ryan.
There's more of a dialogue back and forth. It sounded like he was talking about it as it was more of a business relationship, almost like a partnership in the NFL as opposed to college, where it's more like mentorship and like teaching. For sure, and once you get to the NFL level, of course there's teaching going on, but you're talking about a veteran guy, an older guy. He has a mortgage, he has a house, he has a family, he's been playing this game his entire life. It's a little bit different when you're talking about guys like Dylan Raiola and Daniel Kaelin, who haven't been playing this quarterback position they're in for very long especially at this level right now. So Glenn Thomas wants to create more of a black and white picture instead of a gray area for these quarterbacks right now. And that's kind of, when you see this happens. When you see that, this happens. That's what Glenn Thomas wants. He wants a more black and white instead of that gray area that we talked about. Yeah, and sort of branching off of that is he did talk a little bit. I mean, he answered questions about Heinrich Haarberg, about Dylan Raiola, and about Danny Kaelin, but not much to go off of there from his answers, because he said for the most part it's just been introductions and sort of initial conversations, getting to know these quarterbacks, these young guys, like how their brain works, how it operates, and not too much on-field work, because he's not even allowed to do on-field work with them. Maybe some film eval. I know he was asked about fixing the turnovers from the quarterbacks last year, and he said he hasn't really done too much in-depth evaluation on that, which maybe he hasn't, maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, but I'm sure there's a plan. I think that's probably at the very top of the list, and then a big drop off to what the number 2 most important thing is on his agenda going into next season. And the top priority right now is once spring ball actually happens, once winter conditioning is over. And by the way, he said, watching these quarterbacks at winter conditioning, what he's really watching for is like who's showing the leadership, who's being loud, who's being vocal, who's at the front of the lines during those like brutal mat drills and everything. The quarterbacks that are doing that are the ones that the rest of the team will want to follow. They'll want to play hard for. And to everybody's credit, Glenn Thomas said Heinrich Haarberg's up there, Dylan is up there, Daniel is up there. So good job on those guys on that front. But he also said once spring ball happens and these quarterbacks actually get a football in their hands and start throwing to these wideouts and learning the design of the offense, reps. That's the only way that they're going to get better, is just playing as many reps as they possibly can in spring ball. So that's going to be kind of an Captain Obvious moment, but it's going to be really important for these guys to get on the field again, get a football in their hands, and start throwing to these guys start throwing to this team that Matt Rule and company have kind of built this offseason. Yeah, and I mean the sort of next couple weeks, what that looks like you just said. The other quote that he had in there was, we're starting pretty much with page 1 of the playbook.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of install. Not install because he said we're starting with page 1 of the playbook, not as in like they're installing an entirely new playbook, but just sort of we're starting fresh. We're starting, like you said, and Coach Rule said, what Matt Rule said about Glenn Thomas is he's a quarterbacks coach who coaches from the ground up.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a perfect transition to have 2 true freshmen coming into the program.
And the ground up is, like Glenn Thomas said, was sitting down with Marcus Satterfield, Donovan Raiola for the run game concepts, Garrett McGuire, the receivers coach, for the passing game concepts. He's going to help learn all of that himself and also kind of add his input, which is going to be extremely valuable, I think, for the offense. But also, he said that, it's one thing that he needs to do is sit down, learn about his personnel that he currently has, find out what those guys are good at, and build upon that. Find out what they're not good at, and maybe do less of that, or try to build on that and try to get everything as even as possible. So that's going to be pretty important too once spring ball starts here.
Yeah, we don't even have to go in depth on this because this would be a discussion for entirely. You can make a whole podcast out of this, or a whole in-depth written story about this, about the fact of like Rule. And apparently Thomas is the first time we've met with him. But Rule has had a propensity to have an offense, a defense, whatever. He doesn't try to fit players and pigeonhole players into that offense necessarily. It's more of a collaboration, but what's the word? Just
kind of doing what your guys are good at,
adjusting
doing.
to what they're doing. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, any coach, any good coach out there will try to do that. They're not going to try to force their players to do something that those players aren't specifically good at. So it's always meeting the players at where they're at and kind of going from there. And I think the addition of Glenn Thomas to Nebraska's program, and specifically the quarterbacks room, with the pieces, the kind of interesting situation they have right there with 3 scholarship quarterbacks, that's going to be really important.
And last thing, just to touch on real quick, because we talked about this last week with Matt Rule, just 5-6 days ago. Marcus Satterfield, still the OC.
Sure.
He's also he's now the OC tight ends coach, and this has worked before. And Thomas talked quite a bit about the relationship with Satterfield, saying he has the utmost respect for him. How there's no ego involved between the 2 of them. Yeah, that was an important thing, the no ego part. Yep. Kind of coming in, everybody was kind of wondering if Glenn Thomas was going to be secretly calling the plays. Matt Rule kind of shot that down, at least to us he did, and said Marcus Satterfield will be the one calling plays in 2024, and Glenn Thomas will be a collaborative part, I guess, is a way to put it. But he's going to have his fingerprints on this offense too. He knows the run game, he knows the play action game, and that's going to help quarterbacks grow and learn and develop too when you kind of understand the full scope of things about if you're a young quarterback, understanding what's happening in front of you and why it's happening. I think that's extremely important too. And just to have one guy in there kind of focus on these quarterbacks and not worry about calling plays, designing an offense, that's going to be extremely beneficial. See, Rule got very demonstrative and not like intense, but it's almost like he was annoyed that we were asking about the play calling and stuff. It's like, dude, you hired a co-offensive coordinator, and it's like we were supposed to know that co meant collaborative. It's like, what? You hired him?
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. Like, cool that we got the answer now. Appreciate that. But like, I don't know why there's the frustration of like, I told you guys before. It's like, yeah, you told us that. And then you went and hired a co-offensive coordinator.
Yeah, Rule clearly pays attention to everything, including media stuff. And I think he was kind of taking a shot and saying, hey, Marcus Satterfield is like, stop asking me about this. He is going to call the plays and everything. And yeah, for sure.
So quit asking.
Yeah, and Glenn Thomas is going to be coaching the quarterbacks and having a little bit input on the design of the offense, just like Garrett McGuire does, just like Donovan Raiola does in the run game. So, I understand Coach Rule doing that and everything, and kind of shutting the door and kind of shutting the door on all the rumors that could potentially pop up. Oh, who's calling the plays? Doesn't matter. Marcus Satterfield is calling plays.
I still think after the UTEP game, I might mess around and just say, hey, Coach, first question here.
Yeah.
Zack Carpenter inside Nebraska. Who's calling the plays today in the first half and in the second half? And he'd just be like,
yeah,
dude, what are you talking about? Like, I've gone over this 100 times, like that line from
sure.
Zoolander. Derek, are you serious? I just said it. So I think we want to do a rapid recap, like a true rapid recap today.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Any last thoughts? I don't know about the 49ers offense. He said the illusion of complexity is what Glenn Thomas appreciates about that Niners offense.
Yeah, Rule said that he's always kind of had appreciation for what San Francisco has been doing recently on offense with Kyle Shanahan calling the shots, designing the plays. And the thing that, I kind of, that was cool to catch was Glenn Thomas was saying, the 49ers might look like they do a lot of different stuff, but really it's just how they line up formation. They have a lot of formations. They use a lot of different formations, but usually it's a lot of 12 personnel, some 11, some 13 personnel, a lot of hybrid players who can do a little bit of both, using motions. Like I said, the formations again. Same concepts, same plays really, but it just looks different because the formations look different. There's some formation.
A lot of window dressing.
For sure, involved. A lot of window dressing, and that kind of creates some confusion. It can create some confusion for the defense, but at the end of the day, it's the same concepts. It just looks a little different.
Yeah, and the San Francisco 49ers, Steve, one last pop Quiznos here before we get out of here. Did they win the Super Bowl yesterday?
No, they did not.
Who won the Super Bowl yesterday?
I think the Kansas City Chiefs did.
So the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
You're damn right they did.
Okay.
Right. That's the composed. That was the composed awkward celebration. If I wanted to go off here, I would, like I was last night.
You're containing.
That's what I think. I don't know if you guys can tell, but my voice is a little off. I feels a little hoarse. So that's the reason why I was screaming at the TV last night as the Chiefs win another one. Won their third Super Bowl in the last 5 years, 4 Super Bowl appearances in the last 6 years. After 20 plus years of just playoff heartbreak and playoff embarrassment, it's been a good 6-year run.
Yeah.
For Chiefs fans.
They've had it going on.
I'm obviously going to always talk about that anytime that the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. So that's my signature sign off. For Steve Marik, I'm Zack Carpenter. We'll catch you guys again next time.